Hello everyone, I'm Michael Serapio. For days now, Conservative MPs have been calling on the government to release names, wanting to identify those members who allegedly helped foreign actors to interfere in Canadian affairs. The allegations are contained in a report tabled this week by the National Intelligence and Security Committee of Parliamentarians. But instead of naming names, this is what we've heard from the Trudeau Liberals.
Our government has put in place enhanced tools to fight foreign interference in Canada. That's important, and we've done that.
And I would simply point out the series of measures, beginning with the creation of NSICOP and the series of other measures that have been put in place by this government over the past years.
We have put in place measures like the NSICOP committee. We are currently debating C-70 in committee, which will bring forward more provisions to help strengthen our democratic institutions.
Well, to talk about this, we're now joined by Tonda MacCharles, the Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Toronto Star, Joël-Denis Bellavance, the Ottawa Bureau Chief for La Presse, and Kristy Kirkup, parliamentary reporter with the Globe and Mail. Hello to the three of you.
Hi there. Hello.
Hi there. So, now, I haven't seen you in a while, Tonda, so I'm going to start with you on this one, because is this, as we've been hearing, just political theatre on the part of Conservatives to get the government to name names here, or is there a larger security issue that the government needs to do a better job of addressing?
I think it can be both at the same time. There's for sure a lot of theater involved in this because it's a very explosive report. You know, up to now we've been talking about foreign interference in all the other inquiries in the context of was this or that last two elections affected. But this report came at us on Monday and just painted a much broader picture, you know, not just elections, but through and in between elections. More broadly, it's raised a big concern and shown or indicated that there is credible allegations around there being sitting MPs who are also former references, but sitting MPs working with foreign actors, foreign state actors. So that's big, that's new, that's a real security issue the government has to address. And absolutely, it falls smack at the end of a struggling parliament that's very polarized, and there are theatrics around absolutely everything. So nobody should have expected this was going to be different. And to me, to be honest, the whole question about naming whether or not to name these people, when the head of the committee that released this report and referenced this said they didn't actually question the whole idea of where do we go from here and, you know, does it cast a pall over everybody, that they didn't actually contemplate that question, how it should be answered, was astonishing as well. Yeah. So lots to explore.
Joël-Denis, what do you think?
Well, it shows one thing, that there was a lack of preparation on the part of the Liberal government and the Prime Minister's office on how to react to this. It is surprising because Mr. Trudeau received that report unredacted on March 22nd. So he had time to prepare for the release of that report and give us a more, I would say, convincing response. Now, as Tonda pointed out, it's the first time the spotlight is on parliamentarians in this whole affair of foreign affair interference. And we talk about parliamentarians because it involves MPs, but also senators. Don't forget that. And to me, the CSIS director, David Vigneault, testified last week, yesterday in front of the committee, and suggested a roadmap that should be of interest to party leaders. They should have access to the list of the MPs or senators who are actually suspected of being in cahoot with foreign countries, and ask them an explanations. And if they're not satisfied, make arrangements so that those MPs do not run again in the next elections. They owe it to Canadians, they owe it to Parliament, they owe it to Canada. So that's their responsibility. It's up to them now to act.
Kristy, what's your take on it? This debate is whether or not the names should be named.
You know, I think to Tonda and Joël-Denis' point about, you know, it was quite surprising that the government seemed to be caught flat-footed on this, given the amount of runway that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had. And it is wild to think, again, that somehow this report would not become a bombshell moment that would cast aspersions, frankly, you know, for MPs, for senators. And it was interesting, outside of the Liberal caucus, there were a lot of reporters. I was there, you know, people kind of saying, well, you know, what is it like inside the caucus? Are you looking over your shoulder and wondering about your colleagues? And some of the MPs were saying, well, no, we're not looking at it that way. And I also find that that, very surprising, because how could that not be the case? Ultimately, yes, this is going to come down to a question of law enforcement. The RCMP has confirmed, of course, that it is aware of the committee's report. I think that the chair of the committee did lay out about how members of the committee are bound to the Security of Information Act, which is incredibly serious. They could be prosecuted should they actually reveal the information that they knew in order to put together this report. He tried to say, they did a very careful job in terms of what, went as far as they possibly could in the text of the report. But I don't understand how this is snowballed into the moment that it is right now, left up to this ultimate question of, okay, well, now over to the RCMP, and we're just going to wait to see what law enforcement does. It is, consumes so much oxygen on Parliament Hill, as it should, because of the very serious nature of the contents of that report.
Yeah, well, you use the word aspersions, and I was wondering about how this affects each of the caucuses. How can you move forward knowing that there are credible allegations of members of Parliament, as you said, the Senate as well, who were wittingly working with foreign actors? So how do you think this is affecting caucuses right now on the Hill?
Look, it's hard to get a read. Obviously, they're always cautious about revealing what's going on inside, but you talked to a lot of MPs this week. Many said to us that, it casts a pall over all of us because nobody has the ability to refute it right now. Everybody, the finger is being pointed at a lot of people. And I think that, it's very clear in the report that they say very specifically that Chinese-Canadian politicians have been targeted. So if you're a Chinese-Canadian sitting lawmaker, how can you not wonder if they're talking about you, and how can your colleagues not wonder? It says so right there. So look, it's now, I think, a live debate whether or not the party leaders should take the next step. The members of that committee are sworn to secrecy for life, but constitutional experts do say that the party leaders can benefit from parliamentary immunity and go into Parliament and deal with this, name people, and deal with it within their caucuses. Will they do so? I don't see that happening soon. I think there are things that are going to play out still. The government constantly reminds us that there are caveats around this information we're not aware of, that there is context we're not aware of. Be that as it may, I think it is incumbent, the pressure will build on them to do something within their own caucuses.
Quickly, Joël-Denis.
On that front, the Bloc Québécois leader, Yves-François Blanchet, intends to get the security clearance necessary to have access to the documents. And so because he told me today that he wants to make sure that nobody in his caucus is actually under the influence of foreign states. So, and so if a separatist leader can do that in a federal institution, how come the leader of the Conservative Party does not intend to do it? That will put pressure on Mr. Poilievre to act. I would like to point out that Mr. Singh, the NDP leader, has already asked the security and clearance necessary to have access to those documents, and he will do probably the same exercise. So the sort of the question in caucus in the Bloc Québécois and NDP will take place. It will remain the two other parties who actually can form government to decide whether they're going to follow the same steps.
Yeah, quickly running time. Did you want to add something quickly on this one?
Yeah, I think that there is that political dynamic. If you have the bloc leader coming out and saying, well, this is not going to stand, I have to get more information, the NDP leader taking the steps already to do so, it begs the question, again, what are the Conservatives going to do and what are the Liberals going to do? Yeah. And that necessary follow-up has to take place.
Okay, so we're going to watch that. But before we're done, I also want to talk about a new Léger poll. And this was conducted by Léger for Quebecor Media. Take a look at the results right now, because when you look at the province of Quebec in particular, right now the Bloc Québécois still holds a 31% support. So they're in the lead, although Léger calls that a fragile lead. But look at the Tories and the Liberals, tied at 26% each. Joël-Denis, Léger notes the fact that even Stephen Harper was not able to accomplish what we're seeing under Pierre Poilievre. How significant is this number?
It is, because if a party reaches over 25, it reaches a zone where it is very much contributing to the election of seats in Quebec. So 26% would probably get the Conservative around 20 to 22 seats in Quebec, which is major. It would be double what they have right now. So I think we're about, if the pieces fall as we think they will, about 14 months away from the next federal election. That can change again, and you never know. Once there is a movement, it can swing very far in one direction. We've seen it with the orange wave in 2011.
Okay, so that's true. You know it better than I, that Quebecers tend to vote, and move fast.
When they swing,
Okay, when they swing, they swing. But I was interested, other data in that poll suggests that nevertheless there are at least half of Quebecers still very skeptical about Mr. Poilievre's leadership. And I also went back and reminded myself about the results in the last few campaigns for the last Conservative leader. And, Stephen Harper, yeah, he's right. They didn't get 26%, but guess what? He got like 24.6, so nearly 25% of the vote. And Quebec gave him 10 seats. That was his high point. Then he came down, got the same 10 seats with only 21.7% of the vote in the 08 campaign. In 2011, he got 5 seats with 16%. Okay, so his vote's going down. The next parliament, there's 343 ridings that are going to be tested, right? So I'm not sure we can put those numbers on seat counts yet. And to me, the drill down on how do Quebecers perceive the leader is really important. I think that's still an open question. I think that Canadians and Quebecers are still asking themselves what kind of government would Mr. Poilievre form. That's not to say, by the way, that they aren't completely fed up with Mr. Trudeau.
Yeah, well, and also the fact that Pierre Poilievre has had a very clear Quebec strategy, ever since one being chosen as party leader, but the convention was in Quebec City. He begins every question period in French, not in English. Well, what do you make of the number, Kristy?
Yeah, I think this shows the effort that has really gone into trying to shore up support in Quebec. And frankly, if you look back at other more recent Conservative leaders, Andrew Scheer, Aaron O'Toole, they tried to make inroads in Quebec, and you can see that Pierre Poilievre and his team, they know what they're doing. They are masters at political strategy and essentially building the infrastructure of what they hope will be a majority government the next time that Canadians head to the polls. And they know that Quebec is central to that success. I think that ultimately, again, a lot remains to be seen what will happen with the vote, specifically in Quebec. But this is, if you're Pierre Poilievre and the team, I think you're looking at those numbers and thinking this is going according to plan. And, they are in campaign mode. They are acting like they are in campaign mode pretty much every single day, looking at that next election. They're not waiting for the vote to be called. Yeah,
and of course, here we have a Trudeau government essentially built in Atlantic Canada, Ontario, and Quebec, and now, trailing in Ontario, trouble in Atlantic Canada, now trouble in Quebec. Watching it all, thank you very much for this. We're out of time. Tonda, Joël-Denis, Kristy, thank you for this.
Thank you, Michael.
Have a good weekend.
You too.